It is perhaps the most influential motorcycle movement the world has ever seen. Born in the streets of England in the 1950s, its culture still thrives around the globe. There will never be another motorcycle or rider quite like it. And yet, most of us have never heard of the Cafe Racer. Without the original Cafe Racers tuning and designing their ordinary street bikes for power and handling, manufacturers may never have designed the modern sport bike. The Cafe Racer movement was born in London in the 1950s, developing into a subculture that included a desire for speed, a love of rock and roll, and ultimately an enduring love for a motorcycle that over the past several years is being revived worldwide. The human side of the Cafe Racer was a perfect match for this type of motorcycle. The riders of these machines were young, and they wanted to go fast. The goal of many of the Cafe Racers of the 50s was the ability to hit 100 miles an hour, better known as the ton. Author and journalist Mike Seat has been following the Cafe Racer for 2 decades. He traveled to England in the early 1990s and brought home parts to build a Triton, a hybrid of Norton and Triumph. Last year, he launched Cafe Racer magazine, the first publication devoted solely to these unique motorcycles and the people who ride them.
The term Cafe Racer came from, it was actually a derisive term used to describe kids who hung out in cafes and raced fast. They would hang out in transport cafes and wait till somebody else came by in a fast bike and challenge them for a race, and they'd all rush outside so you could get up the road the fastest. When they get back to the cafes, which are often occupied by long-distance truck drivers, the truck drivers would laugh and say, "You're not a real racer. You're not Barry Sheene. You're just a cafe racer." And the kids thought, "Well, you're dang right, I'm a cafe racer." So they would race from the next cafe to the next one as fast as they could, and the name stuck. They embraced it, despite the fact that it was a derisive term.
Over here, baby boom generation, rock and roll generation, they went out and bought the fastest vehicle they could afford, which over here was a motorbike. In the States, that was a car, and you had your hot rod culture come directly out of Elvis Presley, diners, the Fonz, etc. Over here, similar sort of thing, but all based around motorbikes because of our different income levels, etc. And the other great attraction of cafes, and I suspect diners in the States at that time, was the jukebox. And certainly in this country, when rock and roll first came around in the mid-50s, you could only hear rock and roll on a jukebox. There was no radio stations playing it, no clubs playing it. So this new music of youngsters, mixed with having their own vehicles and their own identity, along comes this identity of the Ton-Up Boy and his bike, the Cafe Racer, because invariably the racing would be from one cafe to another.
And I can tell you and sum that up, if you look at an old Wild West film of cleaning up Dodge City, that's exactly how the Ace Cafe was. Great days, you know, and we used to make the rules up as we used to go along.
The hunger to make their ordinary street bikes go faster and resemble the machines ridden by British racing heroes like Mike Halewood and Jeff Duke was all part of the Cafe Racer's character. Doing the ton, or hitting 100 miles an hour, became a badge of honor, whether you made it back or not.
Back in the day, a 650 twin, you were very, very lucky if you could get to the ton. Your motor had to be absolutely right. If you got to the ton, if you could get to that, is then the handling, not unlike today, the power of a machine often exceeds the performance of the tyres, the brakes, the chassis. That certainly was the case with tuned engines, breathed-on engines of yesteryear. So ton-up, going for the ton, really quite meant something. Not only in terms of machine, but also in terms of the road surfaces and the lighting, with lumps of grease dropping off of axles straight on the carriageway, and that just gets smeared all over the road. Oil dripping out of gearboxes, out of engines, just complete messy roads. You were taking your life into your own hands trying to do 100 mile an hour. But having done it, and people being convinced you had done it, you were quite something.
And the sound from the exhaust, the notes of the exhaust, it was great. And we'd come past here and all the lads would be here with the old bill behind us, the old police behind us, chasing us.
We're sort of invincible in them days. You know, you fell off and you scraped along the floor, you got back up, you was cut, bruised. I've had lost some of my teeth and bent my nose and scraped everything. But you just accepted it in them days, you accepted it.
Quite mad, quite mad. But again, in the context of the period, the 50s and the 60s, it's the time of the atom bomb and the commies conquering space, and we could all be dead in 2 minutes at the press of a button. So the psychology, I suggest, of youngsters and that particular backdrop is, well, we might as well enjoy today because we might not be here tomorrow. And that was played out in full colour out here.
We lost lots of lads down here. I'm afraid it was a regular thing going to the funerals, and it was a sad time for us all, you know. I mean, I've got lots of my friends have gone now.
I was beat, whipped to poop and pop when we pulled in the one truck stop. No joke, man, it's suicide. Riding along with the mother of the bride. Gonna take it back, take it back. Now bitching at me, you better take it back, take it back. Why you gonna beat me? You better take it back, take it back. You got a long, long walk back in Tennessee.
The Ton-Up Boys of the cafe racer culture became devoted to rockabilly music as much as they were to their own motorcycles. Outfitted in leather, real cream hairstyles, and a fascination with American music earned them the nickname Rockers. And they were starting to make front page headlines.
I went to lock the door and they pushed me over.
Right on the ground?
One of the boys, very good looking boy too, I wouldn't have thought it. And then they pulled me right across the buffet from the corner to the middle of the buffet. And then he ran out and put his arm through the plate glass door window.
And they just left you lying on the floor, didn't they?
No, one of the rockers picked me up, another rocker, another table. He was very sweet.
With Britain's notorious tabloid newspapers in need of a new villain, the Rockers made a convenient target for exaggerated stories of death and destruction. The reputation of the Rockers took a most severe beating when they began clashing with groups of scooter-riding teens known as the Mods at seaside resorts in the early 1960s.
The difference between them is they were clean, we were dirty, you know. That's why I look at it, because they had a different form of transport, scooters, but they followed the fashion of the day, of the early 60s. The clothes, the hair. I like the old rock and roll, being a greaser or a rocker. I love the rock and roll and all that. To them, that was old-fashioned. Yeah, I can well understand that. I can understand it.
Although the accounts vary on how bad the violence really was, the period helped solidify the Rockers' rough and tough image.
This is what you might call tribal warfare, I suppose, today, you know, if you want to analyse it. That's all it is, really. Two different groups of people who like different things, and, you know, kids growing up like a bit of a fight on a Saturday night. You know, don't associate me with this, but I'm saying it was going on. I mean, I can remember days when I would arrive in a town with a few mates on the bikes as a rocker, and you'd see the mods there, and you'd stay out of the way. You'd get trouble. There definitely was a war going on.
The national outcry was about youngsters. What are they doing? Something has to be done, be it to do with rock and roll, motorbikes, speed limits, and it hasn't really changed to this day. The subtext of contemporary newspapers is virtually exactly the same, except it's hoodies, it's rap, it's bling.
In addition to clashes with the Mods, Rockers became known for playing other dangerous games. There were numerous reports of something called record racing. Some say record racing was an exaggerated media story, while Others claim it was commonplace at the cafes across England.
It was 100% rocker. The place was bouncing. You know, the people roaring up and down illegally, chased by police.
What it consisted of is jukebox, and every cafe back then had a jukebox, the only place you could hear rock and roll. Tracks were all about 3 minutes long, if I'm not mistaken. Coin in, and then out onto your bike, up to Hanger Lane, the big roundabout just west of here, and back again before the record finished. Just a recipe for carnage, basically.
Despite the negative headlines and mounting pressure for helmet laws, a national speed limit, and a ban on motorcyclists younger than 16, there emerged a movement to rehabilitate the image of rockers and their cafe bikes. In 1962, a preacher by the name of Bill Shergold offered bikers a chance to congregate at his London parish. That was the start of the 59 Club, a church youth mission that attracted thousands of riders that formed good deeds and charity work aimed at improving the public perception of the cafe crowd.
He thought if we gave toys to tots every Christmas or took shoes to orphans in a big mass, let people see bikers doing good, it would change the image. And it worked. And it's funny, but it's carried over here to the States. When you see bike clubs and ABA clubs doing that today, it all dates back to Reverend Bill Shergold.
In the early 1960s, the cafe racer style and performance attracted the attention of the British motorcycle manufacturers. BSA, Triumph, Norton, and Royal Enfield were among the most popular. Few motorcycles have come to characterize the cafe racer as well as the Triton, a homemade hybrid of Norton's sharp handling frame and a Triumph engine. Dave Deegans is credited with popularizing the Triton. His first experience with the Triton was at the end of a tow rope.
I was running a matchless and it broke down, and he ended up towing me, and he was towing me with this Triton at sort of 80, 90 miles an hour to get me back to Twickenham, which was probably 40, 50 miles away. And that stuck in my mind when I was a youngster. So then a few years later, when I had started racing bikes, I thought it'd be nice to make a combination like then, because it was so impressive. And I made my first Triton a racer, and we went to Spain and won a 24-hour race, beating the Italian and Spanish factory teams.
On the track, former cafe street riders like Eddie Dowell, Dave Deegans, and Paul Dunstall helped to develop technologies like the disc brake conversion kits, big bore engines, and tuned exhausts that formed the backbone of the first performance parts aftermarket.
The cafe racer's influence on modern motorcycle manufacturing is still being felt in a lot of ways. I don't think a lot of people are aware of it, but not only motorcycles like the Triumph Thrust and the Ducati Sport Classics, the Paul Smart replica, Kawasaki's short-lived W650 of a few years ago, but motorcycles like the Speed Triple, which is a naked high-performance bike derived from the Street Fighter, which is a direct descendant of the cafe racer, all those bikes came directly from the cafe racer. And I think also if you look at customized sport bikes where people spend untold amounts of money on things like putting carbon fiber all over a Ducati or blinging out a Hayabusa with chrome and everything, the whole idea of customizing your street bike to make it faster and cooler looking and look like a race bike, that all dates back to these guys in the 1950s and 1960s.
I realize there's a whole generation of kids who don't even know what bikes in the 60s look like. Back in the day, you could tell a bike from what the engine looked like. That's very difficult to do anymore. Now it's about swoopy designs or batwing, fairings and all kinds of new fiberglass looks. But I think it's important for people to know where things came from.
There's the purists, guys like me, who would never put a Mikuni carburetor on a British bike, and there's guys that would swear by them. Like I said, you see many commandos out there with Mikunis, and like I said, so there's the purists, and then there's also the guys that love to do the craziest stuff. That's the great thing about Cafe Racer Society, is that anything goes.
The Cafe Racer cult is taking form across the United States and the world. Ton-up clubs, modern rocker rides, and custom cafe racer shows are springing up everywhere.
So from the rockers of the 1950s to the ton-up boys and mods of the 1960s, the Cafe Society has come a hell of a long way. But guess what? Where it's going, it's going to get even cooler and faster.
And it's not just about the bikes. The cafe racer rocker culture may have started back in England a half-century ago, but the U.S. is where it's happening today. Search the net. You'll find that Mods vs. Rockers events are springing up faster than oil leaks out of a BSA. In essence, the people and the faces and the locations may have changed. But even the original rockers can dig the fact that it's still about taking an ordinary motorcycle, investing time, sweat, and gears to make them something unique, something faster than the ordinary, and something that's all their own.
Cafe Racer, only on Discovery HD Theater. It's going to be one hell of a ride.